At the end of April, there was the 34th anniversary of the event that has changed the world, and the consequences of which, unfortunately, will be felt for a very long time. It was the Chernobyl disaster. If you watched the sensational HBO miniseries, you probably remember scenes of KGB surveillance and attempts by this security agency to hide the truth about what happened. Since recent times, we have had access to declassified documents of the KGB about the Chernobyl nuclear power plant and the tragedy of 1986. Now I will read some of them. These documents were found in the archive of the Security Service of Ukraine, not by me personally, but by my colleagues. Most of them were published in this compilation KGB Chernobyl dossier that came out in Kyiv in 2019. It's about 1200 pages. If you read in Ukrainian or in Russian, then you can download this book for free, link in the description, and explore these files yourself. Having searched among 200 documents, I selected and translated 10 interesting excerpts for you. I am Edward Andrushenko, and this is KGB Files. The first document is dated the end of 1978. It's more than 7 years before the accident. The chief security officer of Chernobyl region, Comrade Klochko, informed the head of the KGB Directorate of Kyiv and Kyiv Oblast, Nikolai Vakulenko, that not everything was going well at the power plant.
We continue to receive data from agents and proxies, indicating gross violations of technological standards of construction, fire safety, and safety engineering of construction and installation works, which lead to accidents. There are facts when individual leaders deliberately commit gross violations of technological standards for building construction, thinking only about how to hand over facilities quickly without worrying about its future and possible tragic consequences.
The 7 pages of this document list specific shortcomings in the construction of new plant facilities. I will not read them because they are full of special terminology that is incomprehensible to a person without technical background. In general terms, Klochko, referring to agents, reports about weak building structures, poor waterproofing, low-quality concrete, fires in the main building and machine room, accidents with workers. And the conclusion is
poor construction quality, lack of proper control by the construction directorate may lead to further destruction of construction sites, radioactive contamination of the environment, and other emergencies.
This memorandum, also from the pre-disaster period, is dedicated to the type of nuclear reactor used in Chernobyl, a reactor that will later become notorious, rbmk 1000.
It was received information about the insufficient reliability of rbmk 1000 type of reactors used at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The design flaws of the reactor, as well as individual violations of the rules for its operation, can become the cause of serious accidents.
The next reference was drawn up on April 29, 1986, 3 days after an accident. During those days, there were about 24,000 foreigners in Ukraine, 6,000 of them were in Kyiv. There were students, tourists, diplomats, engineers among them. They had already heard about Chernobyl but didn't have full, accurate and relevant information. They didn't understand how dangerous disaster was and what they were supposed to do. They were scared and wanted to go home as quickly as possible.
Tourists of the USA group, 31 people, who lived in the Rus hotel, tried to purchase air tickets to Leningrad for early departure from Kyiv in the morning of April 29, 1986, putting pressure on the hotel administration. The measures were taken through the ARO, Active Reserve Officer, and agents. The situation was normalized, the group went on an excursion.
The Soviet regime called Western media reports about the scale of the catastrophe a lie and an exaggeration. Foreign journalists who arrived in the Ukrainian capital tried to talk with ordinary passers-by, but had great chances to meet the Chekists without uniform who said only the right things.
There are 16 foreign correspondents in Kyiv. Attempts of correspondents from England, France and Sweden to collect biased information at the Kyiv railway station were prevented by bringing in members of the KGB special team from neutral positions that locked foreigners into themselves. Locked foreigners into themselves means diverted the attention of foreigners to themselves, preventing them from talking to real passers-by.
One of the tragic pages of the spring of 1986 is the May Day demonstration in Kyiv. During these days, it was better not to appear on the streets of the Ukrainian capital, or even better to leave the city. But the authorities decided that the traditional May Day demonstration in the center of Kyiv should take place in order to avoid panic among people and not to disclose information about the disaster. It is a well-known fact that the head of the Republic, Volodymyr Sherbitsky, was against rally, but his Moscow boss Mikhail Gorbachev ordered it to be held at any cost. Sherbitsky was forced to obey and in addition personally came to the demo together with his grandchildren. By the way, this episode, transferred from Kyiv to Minsk, was supposed to enter the HBO miniseries, but was deleted.
During the preparation of the May the 1st demonstration, school students received training suits in which they rehearsed the program on April the 27th, the 28th and the 29th. From May the 5th to May the 8th, these costumes were handed over to schools. Clothing has a fairly high level of background radiation. Schools intend to hand over costumes to the Palace of Pioneers. Decontamination required.
Aspiration of the regime to maintain secrecy around the disaster on the initial stage even forced doctors to literally lie to their patients.
According to the Shevchenkovsky department of the KGB, the administration of the Kyiv Oblast Hospital and 25 other hospitals, referring to the instruction of the Ministry of Health of the Ukrainian SSR, indicates a diagnosis of vegetavascular dystonia in the medical records of patients with signs of radiation sickness. According to the head physician of the regional hospital, A. Klimenko, such a statement of the question may subsequently lead to confusion during prescribing treatment, diagnosing and also resolving the issue of a disability and establishing a pension.
We have a KGB list of data on the Chernobyl disaster that should have been classified. This list, relevant for the summer of 1986, consists of 26 items. Among them there are following:
information disclosing the true causes of the accident at the Unit 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Complete information on the nature of the destruction and the extent of damage to equipment and system of the unit and nuclear power station. Information on the values and composition of the mixture ejected during the accident. A summary of the radiation situation containing the characteristics of pollution in the premises of the nuclear power plant and in the 30-kilometer zone. Information on the results of individual measurements of the radiation situation and the isotopic composition of soil and water. Information about new effective means and methods of decontamination. Summary of radioactive contamination of natural environments, food and feed in excess of the maximum permissible concentration. Generalized information on the incidence of all forms of radiation sickness of people exposed during the accident and the elimination of its consequences. Information about the results of treatment with new methods of means of radiation sickness. Summary of environmental assessments of the consequences of the accident.
The scene of the mentioned miniseries with the soldiers drinking vodka seemed unrealistic and anti-Soviet to some viewers, but what the KGB documents tell us. I found two mentions of vodka in the compilation. The first concerns not soldiers but civilians, inhabitants of Polysky district not far away from Chernobyl.
May the 8th at 7 p.m. a lorry with vodka arrived in the central square of the town Polysky and its sale began. A crowd of about 1,000 people formed. A stampede, scandals took place. The lorry was sent outside the city 5 kilometers, which allowed to disperse the crowd and normalize the situation. A lot of people that haven't been involved in work, hooligans, have accumulated in the city and the district. They take from 10 to 15 bottles of vodka each. Increased police work is necessary.
Unfortunately, there is no clarification in the document whose initiative was this sale of vodka. Another message is devoted to the situation in Ivankivsky district, also not far away from the power plant.
On May the 9th, the vice chairman of the Regional Executive Committee, Comrade Fursov, banned the sale of vodka. In connection with which, on May the 10th and May the 11th, groups of military, police officers and evacuated persons, from 2 to 3 people each, made scandals in the district consumer union. A police post was put up on the basis of the district consumer union.
It should be noted that it was a period of the Gorbachev's anti-alcohol campaign when selling of vodka was severely limited. A huge amount of vegetables, fruits, meat and milk that year was contaminated with radiation, and not all of it was seized and disposed of in time, including due to corruption.
The source, agent, witnessed a conversation between two sellers of vegetables who sold in this market radishes with increased level of radioactive contamination, having passed dosimetric control for a bribe.
The last document is dated 1988. Interest in Chernobyl throughout the planet didn't subside. The communist regime, on the basis of ideas of perestroika, tried to show that it had become more open and was no longer concealing information about the disaster. But, as we see from the KGB files, to a large extent these changes were just an illusion.
In October 1987, the correspondent of the French newspaper L'Humanité, Jean-Pierre Vaudon, with tricks, took samples of soil and water in the vicinity of the shelter object and in the town of Pripyat, as well as along the line in the village of Priborsk, 50 kilometers from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. During the Measure D, secret search and seizure, samples taken by a foreigner were detected and secretly replaced with radioactive-free, clean samples.
Interestingly, L'Humanité was a newspaper of the French communists, which occupied mainly a pro-Soviet position and received support from the USSR. I found an article by Vaudon published after his visit to Chernobyl in November 1987. The author emphasizes:
"But I was allowed to take samples of soil, water and branches at the foot of the reactor buried under concrete, while everywhere in the world it's prohibited to do it close to power stations."
I don't know why, but he writes nothing about the results of analysis of these samples, which, as we know, have been replaced.